Welcome to the Hockey Writers Blackhawks Banter, a weekly show with our top Chicago Blackhawks writing crew, bringing you the latest news, rumors, trades, player grades, game results, and much more. From training camp to the playoffs, from Chelsea Dagger to the Madhouse on Madison, our team covers everything that happens with the Hawks. So get comfortable, grab a beverage. It's time for some Blackhawks Banter. Blackhawks Banter.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the new episode of Blackhawks Banter, presented by the Hockey Writers. I'm your host, Greg Boyce, and as always, I'm joined by my fellow Blackhawks writing crew over at thehockeywriters.com. We have Gail Kauchuk, Brooke Laforno, Sean Filippelli. How is everybody doing today?
Right.
Very well.
Cold,
Good,
but
good.
well.
Yes, it's that time of year. I'll be cool if I don't have to go out and shovel the driveway for a few days, but it is what it is. This is episode 62 of Blackhawks Banter, and we're dedicating it to the only guy to ever wear number 62 in Blackhawks uniform, Luke Johnson. I don't know if anybody remembers Luke Johnson. He played a few games. Ice Hogs fans remember him. He's actually still in the AHL with the Manitoba Moose and playing pretty well. So good for Luke Johnson. But that's an ex-Blackhawk. We're going to talk about a lot of current Blackhawks and maybe future ex-Blackhawks today. But before we get into our action-packed episode, just want to remind everybody that if you haven't signed up for our great Morning Skate daily newsletter, please make sure you get on that train already. We've got plenty of room for you guys to sign up. Just head over to morningskate.io, put your email address in the little box, and then every day, Monday through Friday, you're going to get a great little newsletter put together by our staff here at thehockeywriters.com. All the biggest news stories you'll need, plus a lot of special features that you can't find on the website. You can only get through the Morning Skate. So be the most informed hockey fan in your group of friends and get that Morning Skate newsletter. It's good stuff. You don't want to miss it. So now that we got our sponsorship out of the way this week, we can get right into the meat of the podcast today. And as usual, we're going to start off with our first topic is kind of just talk about some things that happened since we got back together, since we met the last Monday. There were 3 games since then, and it didn't go too well for our Blackhawks, especially in those 2 wild games. They were able to pick up a couple of points in the shootout loss to the Kraken and an overtime loss to the Wild, but overall not the most impressive week of hockey we've ever seen. So let's break it down a bit as we do here on Blackhawks Banner. Sean, we'll start with you, and you wanted to talk about streaks and why they have to stop. What do you got for us?
Yeah, I think we've all come to terms with the fact, at least on this panel anyway, what we should start to expect and rather not expect out of this team by season's end. But to that point, I think we all still expect a level of compete out of this roster. And the reality is when you look at how streaky their play has been, I mean, they're the epitome of a streaky team this season. They enter the year, the 2022 calendar year, riding a losing streak, starting the year by finishing that off with a 6-game losing streak, go on to win their next 4, and now they're on a 3-game losing skid. That's just not consistent with them playing at the competitive level that they need to play at. I'm certainly not suggesting that I want to see them lose every night. That's not what I mean with by getting to a more consistent streak. But at the same time, if they're at least competing the way that they can every single night, these streaks won't happen. And if these streaks aren't happening, then they won't be sending their fan base on such a roller coaster ride of, oh, maybe they can make a push. Oh, never mind, they're the worst team in the league. We can't have those ups and downs. We've been through that enough the past couple of seasons, and at the very least, we expected this to be a season where that wasn't happening. So ultimately, I just want to see a higher level of competition, more consistent play out of this team. And again, not saying I want them to lose every night, but I want there to be a little bit more consistency where if they are battling, then we won't see 3 on, 4 off, 3 off, 4 on, etc. There's going to be more opportunities for them to win and to battle and to stay in and night out, even if they do end up losing. But it won't be so streaky. They just need to stop this already.
Yeah, it's frustrating for sure, but when you're dealing with, let's face it, a mediocre team, that's what you're going to get. Gail, you kind of want to talk about something that we're going to tie into a little bit in our next topic, but you want us to, or not us, but the Blackhawks to focus on development going forward. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, this will kind of be a nice little add-on to what Sean was saying. Yeah, I just don't want to talk about the playoffs anymore. Okay, it's not going to happen. And so, yes, the focus should still be on winning games, but it's always good for the team to build a winning culture. But I think that the focus first and foremost moving forward should really just be on development. There's remaining 40 games, so about half a season. And it should be about getting better for next season. I just think that should be the focus right now. That should be the priority. And I think that means giving your younger players more responsibility, more big minutes, invest in that future, see what you have, see what you have with who's going to be around next year. So I'm talking about stuff like, playing Kevin Lankinen and Arvid Soderblom more in net versus Fleury. Give Philip Kurashev, unless you're planning on trading him, which, we all know that could happen. We're going to talk about that. An extended look on the top six, or try playing him at center to see if he can be a piece of your future. Play Mackenzie Untouchable more. You get the idea. You're talking about your defensive prospects as well. Well, first, Lucas Reichel, right? I mean, he's got 7 games left before his contract will slide. Make a plan, get him up for those 7 more games, however you're going to do it, have him get a taste of things. Same thing with your defensemen, Jacob Galvis, Wyatt Kellenuk, Ian Mitchell, Nicholas Bodine. What is it? What do we have in these guys? Give them a taste of things and see if maybe they're what they might be able to step up to and handle more permanently come next season. Look at the future. And, this might mean that they're not going to win as much, but if that's what they're focusing on, I'm okay with that.
For sure. And I think as we get closer to the trade deadline, more of that ice time is going to open up as the roster starts to change. And with that development in mind, I think it's also key that we keep a track of what's going on with the Ice Hogs, because that's where some of these young players are going to play meaningful games, big time minutes, especially with our defensemen. I think while it's nice to get them up to the NHL, guys like Kellenuk, Galvis, Mitchell, it's nice to get them a little taste. I think it's actually more important for them to play possible playoff hockey this spring with the Ice Hogs. Considering how the Blackhawks have rushed their defensive prospects to the league, and it hasn't worked out for them, and given up on them way too early. Boquist traded, Joki Harju traded. List goes on and on. Maybe it's time to pull that back. I know we're impatient and we want to see different tastes, a different flavor, but maybe patience isn't a bad thing here either. But
yeah. I do agree with what you're saying. I guess I'm just saying 3 or 4 game stints for these guys.
Absolutely. Get them up here. And then when the stretch run and hopefully a postseason run starts for the Ice Hogs, that's when you sneak all your young guys back to the AHL and build a powerhouse. They're not the only team that's going to do that. So, Brooke, you wanted to focus kind of on what you've been seeing this past few games, and that's poor decision-making from the guys in the Blackhawks sweaters. What is your take on what you've seen?
So when I say bad decision making, I kind of want to make it clear that I'm not talking about the little things like turnovers or whatever, because at this point that's kind of expected. When I talk about poor decision making, I feel like the last 2 games, especially this past week, is what led to them losing. Against Minnesota in the first period, Minnesota was up 2-0. Riley Stillman gets in a fight. I guess we can debate whether that was the right move to kind of invigorate the team or whatever. But then Mackenzie Entwistle goes and gets in a fight after stoppage, and both he and the person he was fighting gets ejected. When you're down 2-0 in the first period against a team like Minnesota, you can't be doing that. You can't be a forward down against a team like that. I feel like even if they wanted to have a comeback, even though it kind of seemed insurmountable at that point, you just kind of took yourself out of that by doing that. And I understand it's a heated game, passions, but I don't know. I wasn't smart in my opinion. And then the next night we got Jonathan Toews. And to be honest, I feel like a lot of that loss goes to him. And I'm sorry to say that, but that's just my opinion. I understand that the refs miss a lot of calls. It's frustrating and it is what happens, but he took that 4-minute unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. That can't happen. They had the lead twice. I feel like they maybe could have came out with the win if he didn't do that. So like I said, I get it. They're probably just as frustrated with how the team is kind of trending, but I feel like those just boneheaded kind of decisions like that just costed them completely. So wasn't really happy to see that. And to me, that's kind of more concerning than like the little things, like I said, like turnovers or missed hits or like something like that. So yeah, just wasn't really happy about that.
Yeah, avoidable mistakes are what you're talking about. Avoidable mental mistakes. Mistakes
Mhm.
happen during the high pace of a game, but when there are things like that can be completely avoided, that's what that needs to be cleaned up. And the funny thing is, you mentioned what happened to Morgan Entwistle about getting kicked out for starting a second fight. That same exact thing happened in the Ice Hogs game on Friday night as well, where they had a second player jump in and start a fight at the same time, got kicked out too. So it was kind of weird that both the NHL and AHL teams had the same problem on the same night. Almost happened at the exact time. It was weird. I'm going to talk a little bit about not necessarily anything that happened this week on the ice, but it's a name we love. Trade rumors. We love free agency rumors. So our whole next segment's going to be on the trade deadline. So I'll get the rumor mill started early. And there's a name that popped up in connection to the Blackhawks. And it is a Russian player, Andrei Kuzmenko, who is second in the KHL in scoring right now. He's being touted as the top European free agent available this summer, and the Blackhawks are one of the names that are supposedly very interested in him. Again, when it comes to those sort of things, it's not necessarily how much the Blackhawks are interested in bringing a guy like him in. It's more of how interested he wants to be to come here. So you got to meet halfway, but he would be an interesting and nice addition. Now, the Blackhawks, we've talked a lot about how they've had a lot of success bringing over players from Europe. Of course, when you think of Russian offensive players, we think of Artemi Panarin. He's not quite at that level, but he's still pretty good. He's got 20 goals and 53 points in the KHL right now, which is good enough for second in the entire league in both of those categories. And he's going to be playing for Russia at the Olympics here in a couple of weeks. So that's a guy we should keep an eye out for, because I'm sure he's going to go there knowing that the world is going to be watching, and it's going to be his chance to impress and maybe get himself a few more dollars thrown his way this summer. So he'll be 26 in February. So he's still kind of hitting that prime. And he's got 200 points in 315 KHL games, but a lot of those points have come in the last couple of seasons. So he's kind of getting into his own, hitting that stride, that window where they're kind of players considered at their prime. So he's a name to keep an eye on. Andrei Kuzmenko. Maybe he's the next big European player for the Hawks. We'll see.
I feel like they're doing this for you personally, because you getting that Russian pronunciation just right every time.
That's an easy one, though. That
was pretty easy.
That one, he's not that bad. There's a lot worse out there than that. I can do Kuzmenko all day long. So sign here. I won't mispronounce it. All right, we're going to move on to our second topic for our show here, and it's the topic Brooke wanted us to talk about in our preview post that you can head over to the hockeywriters.com and read our thoughts. It's got to do with a report that came out a couple of days ago. Frank Saravalli of the Daily Faceoff, formerly at TSN, went on a radio show up in Canada. I can't remember which one off the top of my head, but he said everybody is available on the Blackhawks except Kane, Toews, and Seth Jones. Those guys are quote unquote untouchable. One of my least favorite words this time of year. So we wanted to talk about guys that, shouldn't be or should be untouchable right now. And Gail, we'll start with you. And you went with probably the most obvious name. Who is untouchable on this Blackhawks roster, Gail?
Yeah, when that report came out, the first person everybody, what about DeBrincat? DeBrincat should be untouchable. Alex DeBrincat. So the recent report says he's not untouchable, but let's face it, he's pretty much untouchable. The return would have to be out of this world for them to consider getting rid of trading DeBrincat. Their 24-year-old star, it's a no-brainer to keep him in the fold. And we've got to witness this, him, just evolving into an all-around player and a superstar here in Chicago. Fifth year playing with the Blackhawks. He's currently in the second season of a 3-year contract for $6.4 million annual cap hit. And yes, come 2023-24 season, he is going to demand a hefty raise. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But that's also when Titties and Kane's contracts are up. So even if the two of them resign, they're not going to sign for as much money. So I think that you can, it's just makes sense to allot that money and have DeBrincat stay around. I mean, come on, he's leading the team in goals with 24 goals, second on the team with 33 points. We all know that, he came into the league and he's really only had like one kind of off year. Other than that, he's been phenomenal with the goals. The organization has pretty much been selling his smile as the future face of the franchise since he got here, so I just don't see that changing anytime soon. I don't think DeBrincat's going anywhere.
Probably not. But I'll touch on that here in a second. Spoiler alerts. Brooke, who is your pick for an untouchable Blackhawk right now?
So I kind of wanted to think outside the box a little bit for this, because we kind of figure who is untouchable and not untouchable. And you know what? I've said the name Riley Stillman the past 2 episodes because I picked him as the player to highlight. And I feel like at this point, I'm going to find a way to implement him in the show every single week. So it's Riley Stillman story time with me. That's a new segment. So buckle in. So I said Riley Stillman, but like I said, outside the box a little bit. My thought process behind that was, when you think of the defense on this team, the defensemen are kind of have value right now at this point, especially for playoff teams. You think of Connor Murphy, Jake McCabe, Calvin DeHaan, any of those defensemen have value. So I feel like it might, when they go down the full rebuild mode, which we all know they should, and they probably will, that those players may be gone. And if that happens, then they're going to need something there on the blue line. And they do have a lot of nice defense prospects, like with Bodan and Alec Regula and Isaac Phillips, Ian Mitchell. But at this point, I think Riley Stillman is pretty, he's kind of made a case for how he's pretty much proven, I think, at this point, more than the other ones, which is nice to have. So hopefully he continues to grow. And then maybe if he does, he can continue to be an anchor at the blue line until they kind of fully develop and rebuild. But at this point, I wouldn't move on from him just yet. Let's see what happens here on the blue line.
Yeah, he's definitely been improved the last couple of weeks. And then, of course, now he's suffered that shoulder injury a couple of games ago. So injuries is never a good time for an injury. But, man, when you're finally like putting it together and then you get hurt, it makes it even worse. So hopefully he'll be back in that lineup sooner rather than later. Sean, who do you have as our untouchable Blackhawk?
A little bit off the table here, because most people think he should be moved because he's not having a great season, but Dominic Kubalik, and it's for that very reason that I think he shouldn't be moved at all. And what I mean by that is, he's a former 30-goal scorer in his rookie season in the NHL after coming over, being a Swiss League MVP in Europe, where he was putting up points regularly. And he's dipped a little bit. His production has dipped. We've seen that. He's struggled throughout this year mostly, and a little bit through last year. So everyone seems to think, well, he should be easily expendable at that point. It's a contract season. He's going to have to get re-signed this offseason. Why not get rid of him? But I think all of that being said, given what we've seen he can do, now's not the time. His trade value is going to be at an all-time low. So if they try to get any kind of return for this guy, it's not going to be near what he's going to be worth when he gets back up to speed. And you alluded to players being in their prime. He's 26. He's going to be playing through it. He's playing through it as we speak. He's going to bounce back. He's proven that when you look at his history. I know Europe is a different game than North America, but he's proven that he can do it. He proved he can do it over here on this ice when he scored 30 in his rookie season. That's not a fluke. He can score, and he's obviously bouncing back a little bit through the latter half here of 2021-22. I believe 4 or 5 points in his last 6 games alone. So he's obviously doing better than he was from a very sluggish start. It's just not ideal right now. It's not a good time. His trade value would be way too low. And this is the kind of guy you want to build around anyway. Not so much like a DeBrincat, who I agree is the face of the franchise, but Kubalik can score. You're going to need players who can score. That's not something that you just want to get rid of, especially for next to nothing. And not only that, but because of his struggles and because it is a contract year, that should work to Chicago's advantage. They should be able to sign him for a little bit less than they would have if he came out and scored another 30 or 40 this season. So all factors considered, it's not the right time for Chicago to get rid of him. So that's why he's untouchable. Not because his play is making him untouchable, but because of what he's going to do when he bounces back.
Very good points. But it's going to be a kind of a sticky contract situation if he's still here, but he's still restricted free agent, I believe. Yes. So that will make things a little easier. We'll see how that goes. I see an arbitration hearing in his future. Well, it came up to me now, and I'm going to preface this by saying that we have to keep these types of reports with a grain. We got to take them with a grain of salt, especially when we're still 2 months away from the trade deadline. The trade deadline is March 21st. We got a long way to go. A lot of things can happen. And then when the word untouchable is put out there to guys like Kane and Toews, well, of course they're going to be considered untouchable because you got to remember they have no movement clauses. They can't be traded unless they say we want to be traded. So no one's calling on them until it's made known that they want to be traded. And let's face it, I know we want to hang on to the glory days, but that ship has sailed. If one or both of those guys come to management and say, I want another shot at a cup, can you make it happen? At the very least, this franchise owes them that favor and saying, yeah, we'll put you where you want to go and we'll see what happens. But until one of them says that, they are untouchable because they have no movement clauses. And I think you put Jones under that untouchable category too, because just that huge contract hasn't even kicked in yet. I can't imagine too many people are looking to take on a contract of that size that hasn't even started yet. So plus the Blackhawks obviously are identified him as one of their building blocks. So it would probably take a lot, even if someone did want him to pry him away. Other than that, nobody on this team should be untouchable, including those three, if they say they want to get traded or you get an offer. And that includes Alex DeBrincat. Now, I am not advocating in any way, shape, or form that we actively try to trade Alex DeBrincat, but if somebody calls you and offers you the farm, you got to at least listen. It would be a tough decision, but let's face it, folks, this team is going nowhere. It's not going to the playoffs this year. It's not going to the playoffs next year. Despite what Stan Bowman thought in the offseason, this team was not one or two players away from contending. Look at the Minnesota Wild. Look what they've got going on. They've got superstar in Kirill Kaprizov, who they drafted, and Kalen Addison, who scored a goal, was acquired in a trade for a veteran, the Jason Zucker trade. Matt Boldy, who's been contributing, drafted. They got another star in the making in Iowa, Marco Rossi, drafted. They got a future franchise goalie in Jasper Wallstedt, drafted. What do the Blackhawks have that they've drafted recently? Not a whole lot, nothing to that level. So you got to get assets, you got to get picks, you got to get prospects. And if somebody gives you a call and says, I'll give you my next 2 first-round picks, my best prospect in my league, in my prospect pool right now, and I'll give you an NHL-ready player for Alex DeBrincat, I'm not saying you make that trade, but you definitely sleep on it. You consider it. Nobody should be untouchable right now. This team is not going to be contending for a bit until they change it. And there's nothing exciting in the pipeline right now. So they got to make some changes here. So you can't be thinking about who we got to keep. It's what can I get for everybody on this roster right now? That's what I'd be doing if I was in charge, but I'm not in charge. So, which might be a good thing.
They never listen to us.
Yeah, no, it's frustrating.
It is.
Just gonna give everybody a quick reminder about that great morning skate newsletter as we get closer to the trade deadline. The morning skate will keep you updated on all the exciting moves that will be happening over the next few weeks all across the league. So make sure you head over to morningskate.io and sign up for that if you haven't already. I mean, we've told you about it literally like 3,000 times. So what are you waiting for? Don't be the last person to do it. All the cool kids are doing it. All right, let's move on to our next topic. This is where we like to spotlight a player for good or bad reasons. It's mostly good, but that might change this week. Brooke, who is your player spotlight for this week?
I feel like with my player selections, I am trying to pick players that probably wouldn't get recognized in the regular sense. So I picked Henrik Borgstrom. I understand he's been kind of off all year. He has 7 points in 27 games. He's kind of been in and out of the lineup. He's on the top line. He's on the bottom 6. It's just healthy scratched recently, but against Minnesota, he had a 2-goal game. That was pretty good for him. And I think they said that was his first multi-point game since he was with the Florida Panthers last. So you know what? I give him kudos for coming out there and having a strong game after being healthy scratched. That's what we want to see. We want to see players succeed. We talked about that with Dylan Strome after he was healthy scratched. I don't know if that's really going to help him, meaning I don't know if he's going to be here, Henrik Borgstrom. I don't know if he's part of the team's future, but it's, like I said, nice to see him contribute and have a good game. So want to give kudos to him.
Yeah, it was good to see that 2-goal game for sure. He's been a disappointment. There were a lot of high expectations coming into this year. So maybe that gets things going. It's not how you score them. They weren't pretty goals by any means, but you take them any way you can get them, especially when you're struggling. Sean, who do you want to give some recognition to?
I unfortunately think that the bad luck of Lankinen deserves a spotlight, but for the right reasons. When you look at what Kevin Lankinen did for this team last year, and I mean, I've said it on the show and everyone knows this, I'm not saying anything new, but he was thrown into the fire and really managed that workload and really quite well to the point where, he should have been in Calder consideration for much of the season until they dipped and his numbers dipped as well. But the reality is he had a great season last year and he sort of came out of nowhere, so to speak. Whereas this year, playing behind Fleury, everyone knew he was going to be in that position as he should have been, but he has just not done well. And the reality is, though, the team in front of him hasn't either. Same thing that Fleury faced, where when the Hawks were struggling, so was he. That's sort of what Lankinen's faced as well. But, if not even more so, because his record is far from where it was last year, and so are his numbers. However, when you look at his recent play, and this is what I wanted to highlight, you look at this guy come in relief for Fleury on Saturday, stands on his head, does everything he possibly can, plays the next night in a back-to-back, faces 44 shots, again, does everything he can, deserves a much better fate than he got with that loss. So his record doesn't do him justice for what he's actually doing with the workload he's again facing. And now the poor guy's out 2 to 3 weeks with a hand injury. It just seems like he can't catch a break this season. And I'm not sure why, because he just deserves a better fate from what he put up with last year. And it seems that he's finding struggles even beyond his best efforts this year. So I just want to shine a spotlight and say that I hope his season ends off a lot better than it started. I hope that people still recognize what he's capable of, and I hope that he still has the confidence in him to come back next year when the spotlight should be on him as their starter, and that his confidence can be back to where it was last year, because he deserves that.
Yeah, much like we just talked about with Borgstrom, the timing of this injury, it couldn't have been worse either, because he was coming off arguably his best game of the year. That the Hawks didn't lose that overtime game because of anything Kevin Lankinen did. I mean, you make 40 saves, you should win a hockey game, but that wasn't the case. But that was one of his best games of the season. So you'll be watching this hopefully bright and early on Tuesday, but we're recording this Monday evening, and Derek King had just revealed 2 to 3 weeks for a hand injury on Lankinen. So hopefully he'll be back soon, and he'll be, as we all can imagine, come late March and April, he should be the starter. That role will probably open up for him. Gail, who gets your spotlight this week?
I'm going to once again go with the underdog, underappreciated card and pick Calvin Haan. Everybody's always talking about Seth Jones and Connor Murphy, and they're the star defensemen, but and a lot of people have already written off Haan because he probably is going to get traded, but he's still with this team. He's still quietly doing his job and doing a very good job of it. He's been leaned on a little bit in the past little bit here because Seth Jones was out and Jake McCabe was out. They both had COVID. And then we know the last couple games, Riley Stillman, unfortunately, is out with left shoulder injury. I forget what game it was. It was 4 or 5 games back, I think. But Haan left in the intermission, he got like x-rayed on his hand. And he came back and, played the rest of the game. And right. So the x-ray came back okay, that he was able to go big game, but there's obviously something wrong, right? And he played through it. He's just a warrior. And I like that his effort should be appreciated. Last 3 games, over 23 minutes of ice time, 7 shots on goal. And that's from a defensive defenseman. So that's pretty high. 5 hits and 13 block shots. 13 block shots. It's not easy to just jump in front of a flying puck night in and night out. So kudos to that. He's doing a great job. He's going to get traded to a contender. He's going to be sorely missed. And I think I'm going to root for whatever team he goes to win the Stanley Cup.
He is Chicago tough.
Careful. What if it's St. Louis? We don't want any of that.
I know. I could eat my words there, but
yes. Way to drive up that trade value, Ms. Gail. Awesome job. Let's get a second round pick for him. He reminds me a lot of another one of your all-time favorites, and Nicholas Jarmelson, yeah. Just that warrior type guy that would just take a beating every night and just keep getting back up. Definitely will be a valuable asset come trading time. That's the type of guy every team with long playoff aspirations wants on their blue line. You guys all had positive spotlights, but I'm gonna call somebody out for the wrong reasons. And Brooke, you already mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I'm gonna talk about our captain Jonathan Toews and the crappy weekend he had. That's what it was. It wasn't a good couple of games against Minnesota. You talked about Saturday night. He had that unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. At the time, they were up 2-1, and they gave up the game tying goal in the second half of that 4-minute penalty, which would have been killed off had he just kept his mouth shut. I mean, granted, they came back and took the lead again quickly after that, but it changed the momentum of the game. And when you're on the road, you can't do that. He's the captain. He's been here forever. He knows better. And then, that start in the Friday night game was terrible too. And, we love to scream. We did it a lot with Colleton. We've done it with King. You get mad at the coaching staffs when the players don't start right when at the opening draw. But again, captain, veteran leader. He's essentially a coach on the ice. He's got to take a little bit of the heat for that too. We've seen it so many times where this team, Gail, you've talked about it ad nauseum the last 2 seasons about how this team doesn't play 3 consecutive periods half the time. He's got to take some of the heat for that too, as the captain, as the guy on the ice that can actually control what happens. Derek King, Jeremy Colleton can only tell the guys what to do so long. It's up to the guys that actually execute. His face-offs, we've been commending him. He's been pretty good, but his face-offs against Minnesota were not good. He was 44.2% combined for the 2 games, under 50% both games. Only the second time this season he's had back-to-back games where he lost more face-offs than he won. He was on the ice for 3 of the 4 goals against in that Saturday night loss. And, if it sounds like I'm nitpicking, it may be, but I mean, I know with Toews, he's had the year off. He's not the player he was, but you just want to see more, especially from your veteran leader. That penalty it just can't happen in that situation. It was disappointing. There's been a lot of disappointing things from Toews this year. So, maybe we give him the benefit of the doubt for everything, but I think it's also fair that you got to call him out when he's doing things that he can do better by his own volition. And just, I know arguing with refs is one of his favorite things, but sometimes you just got to shut your mouth and get in the box. Be a pro, lead by example.
He doesn't have Brent Seabrook to talk him off a ledge anymore.
Well, let's get him back here then. Put him behind the bench.
Yeah.
All righty. Final topic, the shootout round. This is how we end every episode of Blackhawks Banter. We're going to do some 5 quick pace questions, kind of predict the future, and also talk a little bit about what we've seen. So we're going to start off with the week ahead. The Blackhawks will play 3 times. One of those games will already be done by the time you guys enjoy this program, listening wherever you listen. But they have a game with the Detroit Red Wings sandwiched in between a home and home series with the Avalanche. They play the Avalanche later tonight, Monday, and again on Friday. 6 points up for grabs. Avalanche, one of the best teams in the league. So what are we thinking? How many of those 6 points are the Blackhawks going to nab? Sean, we're starting with you on this one.
We'll get 3 points this week.
Gail, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm going with 3, and that's like really, really positive vibes. I'm hoping 3 because it could be worse, a lot worse.
Brooke?
Yeah, I'm saying 3-2. I think they'll beat the Red Wings, and I think they'll get an overtime point or something in one of the Colorado games.
Right.
All right. I'm going to go with just 1 single point. I think they'll get the Detroit game to overtime, and they just haven't been very good past overtime this year. So I'm going to just go 1 point. That's where I'm going. I'm shooting low this week. With the news that Kevin Lankinen is out 2 to 3 weeks and 3 games on the schedule, would you start Arvid Soderblom at all this upcoming week? Gail, what do you think?
I'm going with what I said earlier, and developing for the future. And Marc-Andre Fleury, he still seems to be recovering from COVID. They're saying that he gets fatigued still pretty easily. So I would at least give Soderblom the Detroit game, at least.
Brooke, what do you think?
Yep, Detroit game for sure.
Sean?
I want to see him against the Avs on Friday, to be honest. If we want to see what we have here, let's put him in there and see what's up.
Yeah, I also think that Friday Avs game is the place to start them. A, you're at home, and B, give the Avs a different look. You're playing them twice in a couple of days. Don't give them the same goaltender for both games. Make them change, especially a guy that there's very little.
Research.
Yeah, there's not his book isn't very big, so
Yeah.
give him a different look. That's exactly what I would do too. Give him that Friday game, and then that gives Fleury, an extra few days with them off all weekend. Which is strange, but all right. The Blackhawks are the only team in the NHL to actually are at the legit midway point of the season. They've played 42 of their 82 games. So these next three questions are going to be about where we're at the midseason. And we're going to start with who you think your midseason Blackhawks MVP is exactly halfway through the season. Brooke, who's your most valuable Blackhawk?
Marc-Andre Fleury. Got to go with him.
Sean, are you echoing that?
I appreciate that, but I'm going to say the new face of the franchise, Alex DeBrincat, is the MVP.
Gail, you breaking that tie, or you got somebody new?
Yeah, no, I got to Brinket too.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Alex DeBrincat as well, just because he's been consistent. And can you imagine where this team would be without Alex DeBrincat right now? It would be bad. It would be really bad. All right, sticking with the midseason theme, who's the biggest surprise in a positive way at the mid-season mark? Sean?
He's changed my mind, so I'll say Seth Jones.
I love it. Number two, Gail, you're second on this one. Who do you got as your biggest surprise player?
Yeah, I talked about this at the beginning of January, and we kind of did the end of season or the end of the year. I'm going to go with Brandon Hagel.
Brooke, who's your biggest surprise?
Yeah, I'll say Hagel too. I didn't expect him to be top 4 in scoring on this team.
Yeah, I'm picking Hagel as well. He's second in goals with 10. He's got more goals than Patrick Kane right now. Had you told me that at the beginning of the year, I would have A, thought you were high, and B, would have said, if that's the case, this season has gone terribly wrong. So not that far from the truth. I love Brandon Hagel, but he should never be second in goals on your team that has Patrick Kane on it. So good for him.
Three of us, I think, picked Hagel. Shout out to Mackenzie and Twistle. He's doing well.
Yeah, good old Twisty. Good old.
Oh
Twisty.
yeah.
I'm a fan of his just because if I think about how he was 2 years ago, that first few months in Rockford, I didn't think he had a chance to make the NHL, but his progression has been fantastic. Good little story. We're going to finish off the shootout round. Our biggest surprise player. We got to flip that coin. Who's been the most disappointing Blackhawk at the mid-season mark? Gail, you're going to lead us off on this one.
I am going to say Kirby Dach.
That's probably going to be a popular pick this round. Brooke?
I'm going to say Henrik Borgstrom. I just gave him some love, I know, but I actually expected him to be the breakout player of the team, and that hasn't been the case.
Sean, who's your most disappointing Blackhawk?
It's been tough to watch Kirby Dach struggle, so I'm going to go with Dach.
Yeah, I wanted to pick Dach here. I know we talked about it at the end of the year, but I'm going to give him the benefit of doubt because he's still young and developing. A bigger overall disappointment as far as expectations versus performance to me, it's Dominic Kubalik. He's been the most disappointing Blackhawk. 9 goals, 16 points. We expected a lot more. They needed a lot more. He's been better of late, but man, he's been a bummer this year. And I like him a lot, but you got to score more, buddy. I picked you to lead the team in goals.
Oh, you're gonna hold that against him for
You're darn right I am. I get crap for it on Twitter, so crap rolls downhill. I got to push it his direction.
My breakout players are always wrong, so I think, like I said, I picked Nylander before. So.
Yeah, if we were good at spotting breakout players, we may not be like having this weekly chat on Zoom.
Yeah.
We'd be working in a front office somewhere. So it is what it is. And it is what it is. That was the 62nd episode of Blackhawks Banter. Once again, thanks to Brooke, Gail, and Sean for chatting all things Blackhawks this week. We sure do have a lot of fun doing this. And we couldn't do this without you guys checking in and watching us every week. So thank you all. No matter if you're watching on the YouTube channel or wherever you consume your podcast, we are grateful for your listenership and your readership over at thehockeywriters.com and signing up for that morning skate newsletter. Don't forget to do that, please. Like I want to stop telling you to sign up for it. So just sign up for it already. All right. You won't regret it. And that's going to wrap it up. So thank you, everybody. And please stay safe out there so we can get back together next week and talk more Blackhawks.